ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters from Africa and across the globe, today, I stand before you to echo a voice that has stirred hearts and challenged power, a voice that has dared to rise above fear, corruption, and silence. This is the voice of Ibrahim Traoré, the young and fearless leader of Burkina Faso, whose words, "I am risking my life for you," are not just rhetoric, but a living testimony of sacrifice, conviction, and unyielding love for Africa. In an era where many leaders speak for power, Traoré speaks for the people. His message is a bold rejection of neocolonial control, a defiant call for African unity, dignity, and true sovereignty. Today, we revisit his powerful address, not just as a speech, but as a wake-up call, a challenge, and a promise. In the current age of geopolitical uncertainty, where the interests of nations often collide with the well-being of their people, few leaders have been bold enough to place their own safety on the line for the greater good. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso is among the rare exceptions. His powerful declaration, "I am risking my life for you," is not a metaphor, but a statement of literal truth. His leadership reflects a conscious choice to walk a path fraught with danger, resistance, and isolation, all in service of a vision for a sovereign, self-reliant Africa. This keynote, sacrificing personal safety for national sovereignty, encapsulates not only the essence of Traoré's leadership, but also the immense personal toll that true commitment to freedom can demand. When Traoré took power in Burkina Faso in 2022, it was not through the comforts of a democratic transition or the inheritance of a well-oiled political machine. He came forward at a time when the country was plagued by insecurity, particularly due to violent extremist groups and years of political instability. The Sahel region, including Burkina Faso, had become a battleground, not just for terrorist groups, but also for geopolitical interests of powerful nations. Despite these challenges, Traoré chose to step into leadership, fully aware that doing so placed a target on his back from both internal and external forces. Choosing to lead a country in turmoil requires courage. Choosing to do so while resisting the pressures of international powers requires something greater: conviction. Traoré has made it abundantly clear through both words and actions that he does not intend to be a puppet of foreign interests. Same person, by severing ties with former colonial powers, questioning the presence of foreign military bases, and demanding the right of his country to determine its own path, Traoré has placed himself at odds with deeply entrenched global structures. These decisions have not come without consequences. Political pressure, economic sanctions, propaganda campaigns, and even threats to his life have followed. And yet he persists, not for personal gain, but for a principle larger than himself: the sovereignty of the Burkinabé people. The threats Traoré faces are not abstract or theoretical. Political assassinations are a tragic part of Africa's post-independence history. Leaders who challenged the status quo, Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Muammar Gaddafi, often paid the ultimate price. Traoré, a student of this history, understands that speaking against global hegemony and standing against neocolonial influence places his life in immediate jeopardy. Yet, His message remains unwavering. His public addresses frequently emphasize that he is prepared to die if it means future generations will live with dignity and freedom. This is not martyrdom for its own sake, but a calculated sacrifice, a deep moral commitment to a cause greater than personal survival. In Traoré's worldview, leadership is not about prestige or power. It is about duty, and that duty demands personal sacrifice. He has rejected luxuries and the excesses that often accompany high office. His lifestyle choices signal to the people that he is one of them, that he shares in their struggles, that he too is vulnerable. This form of servant leadership stands in stark contrast to the elite class of politicians who exploit public office for personal enrichment while hiding behind the protection of foreign alliances and diplomatic immunity. Traoré, by contrast, has no such shield. He faces each day with the knowledge that his actions make him a target, but also with the conviction that his people deserve nothing less than fearless leadership. Moreover, the personal risk he takes serves as a unifying symbol for the people of Burkina Faso. In a country worn down by decades of exploitation, poverty, and violence, Traoré's willingness to risk everything provides hope. It is a powerful narrative, one that says real change is possible, but only when leaders are willing to make real sacrifices. This sentiment resonates not just within Burkina Faso, but across the African continent. His example challenges other leaders to reevaluate their loyalties and commitments. Are they serving their people or external masters? Are they protecting their own lives at the expense of their nation's future? Sacrificing personal safety also means enduring psychological and emotional strain. Traoré's position forces him to live under constant surveillance, restrict his movements, and be wary of betrayal from within. The emotional toll of living under such conditions can be immense, yet it is a burden he accepts. What makes this sacrifice even more profound is that it is chosen. He did not have to step into this role. He was not driven by ego or ambition, but by a sense of moral responsibility. He chose to risk his life because he believes that the people of Burkina Faso, and by extension all of Africa, deserve better than the status quo. His sacrifices have already borne fruit in symbolic and tangible ways. Public morale in Burkina Faso has seen a resurgence, with many citizens expressing renewed pride and hope. Military morale has improved, and grassroots movements have found new momentum. The youth, in particular, see in Traoré someone who speaks their language, not just in words, but in actions. He embodies the dreams of a generation disillusioned with empty promises and political theater. His authenticity, born of sacrifice, gives weight to his vision and credibility to his mission. To risk one's life is the ultimate form of commitment. It strips away pretense and forces clarity of purpose. In Traoré's case, it reveals a man deeply committed to national sovereignty, not as a slogan, but as a living, breathing reality. Sovereignty for him is not negotiable. It is the foundation of dignity, agency, and future prosperity. And if securing it means enduring isolation, threats, and the possibility of assassination, then so be it. That is the price he is willing to pay. Not for fame, not for legacy, but for freedom, genuine, self-determined freedom that cannot be bought or dictated from afar. His life is on the line, not for personal power, but for the liberation of a people long denied their rightful place in the world. Rejecting neocolonialism and foreign exploitation is at the heart of Captain Ibrahim Traoré's leadership and one of the most defining elements of his message to Africa and the world. His rise to power in Burkina Faso came during a period when the continent continues to grapple with the deep and lingering effects of colonialism, not only in its traditional form, but also in its modern, more insidious version, neocolonialism. While many African countries appear politically independent, the economic, military, and ideological influence of former colonial powers still dictates much of their internal policy. Traoré stands in firm opposition to this dynamic. His rejection of neocolonialism is not just theoretical. It is manifest in bold actions, symbolic gestures, and firm resistance to foreign control over African destiny. Neocolonialism, by its very nature, thrives on dependency. It ensures that African states remain structurally tied to external powers. Through trade agreements, debt traps, military arrangements, and aid packages that often come with strings attached. Rather than enabling growth, these arrangements frequently preserve the power imbalance that existed during colonial times. Under such systems, African resources continue to flow outward, while decisions affecting African populations are made in foreign capitals. Traoré has publicly and repeatedly denounced this dynamic, calling it for what it is: the modern-day continuation of exploitation under a different name. His rejection of neocolonialism can be seen in Burkina Faso's diplomatic and military realignments. One of the most dramatic examples is his decision to terminate military agreements with France and demand the withdrawal of French troops from Burkina Faso soil. For decades, France maintained a military presence in its former colonies under the guise of counterterrorism and security cooperation. However, for many citizens, these foreign troops represented continued domination, often protecting elite interests rather than defending the people. Traoré's expulsion of French forces was more than a political decision. It was a powerful symbol of reclaiming national autonomy. It was a public declaration that Burkina Faso would take responsibility for its own defense and that it no longer wished to serve as a pawn in global power games. Economic independence is another arena where Traoré challenges neocolonial structures. African nations, rich in natural resources, continue to export raw materials while importing finished goods at a premium. This colonial economic model keeps wealth flowing outward and prevents local industries from developing. Traoré has criticized the unfair contracts and foreign-dominated mining operations that extract gold, uranium, and other valuable minerals from Burkina Faso without adequately benefiting the local population. He has vowed to renegotiate these contracts or cancel them altogether if they do not serve the national interest. By doing so, he is confronting the system that allows multinational corporations to profit immensely from Africa's wealth while leaving local communities in poverty. Language and education also play a role in the perpetuation of neocolonial influence. French remains the official language in Burkina Faso and many other African countries, despite the fact that most citizens speak indigenous languages. The use of colonial languages in administration, education, and law often excludes the majority of the population from fully participating in public life. Traoré has spoken about the need to reclaim African identity and cultural pride, starting with language and history. This is not about isolationism, but about re-centering African values and narratives in African governance, rather than continuing to measure progress and legitimacy through a European lens. Media narratives and international institutions often reinforce neocolonial power structures by shaping how African leaders are perceived based on whether or not they conform to Western expectations. Leaders who resist foreign influence are frequently portrayed as dictators, strongmen, or populists, while those who comply with international agendas are praised for their stability or cooperation. Traoré's own portrayal in international media reflects this bias. Despite his popularity among many Africans and his direct communication with the people, he is often scrutinized or vilified in Western outlets. This selective framing reveals how neocolonialism extends beyond economics and politics into the realms of ideology and perception. By rejecting these imposed narratives, Traoré is also fighting for the right of Africans to define themselves on their own terms. His message resonates because it reflects the lived experience of millions of Africans. Many have grown tired of leaders who speak of independence while signing exploitative deals behind closed doors. Traoré's rhetoric is matched by action, and that combination is rare. His approach forces a national reckoning with questions that many prefer to avoiding. Who really controls our resources? Who benefits from our alliances? Who writes the rules we are told to follow? By asking and answering these questions honestly, he pushes the nation, and by extension, the continent, toward a more truthful and self-determined path. Importantly, rejecting neocolonialism is not about isolation or antagonism for its own sake. It is about building equal, respectful partnerships. Traoré has made clear that Burkina Faso is open to international cooperation, but only if it is rooted in mutual respect and national interest. Aid or investment that undermines sovereignty is not welcome. This stance invites new models of engagement. South cooperation, regional alliances, and grassroots empowerment that prioritize African agency over dependency. Traoré's defiance of neocolonialism is not without cost. It has led to diplomatic friction, economic pushback, and even threats of subversion. Yet the strength of his message lies in its consistency and moral clarity. He is not simply reacting to global injustice. He is building a counter-narrative and a new framework for African liberation. His vision offers an alternative to the status quo, a model where African nations stand on their own feet, speak with their own voice, and chart their own future. Calling for African unity and self-determination is perhaps one of the most ambitious and urgent parts of Captain Ibrahim Traoré's message. In an age when global powers often exploit division among African states to maintain influence, Traoré's appeal for unity stands as a radical yet necessary call to action. His vision is rooted in the belief that Africa's survival, dignity, and prosperity lie in its ability to come together, not just in words or ceremonial gatherings, but in shared values, coordinated action, and the collective assertion of independence. For too long, the continent has suffered from artificial borders, rivalries, and disjointed policies that have hindered progress. Traoré calls on Africans to move beyond these limitations and embrace a future built on cooperation, solidarity, and genuine self-governance. The idea of Pan-Africanism is not new. It has deep historical roots, going back to leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Singh, and Thomas Sankara. He understood that Africa's strength must be forged through unity. What makes Traoré's call significant is that it arrives at a time when many African countries face similar challenges in insecurity, youth unemployment, economic dependence, and weakened national institutions. These are not isolated problems. They are regional, continental, and systemic. Traoré argues that fragmented approaches to these shared issues only serve the interests of external actors. True liberation, in his view, will only come when African states coordinate their efforts, pool their resources, and defend one another against external interference. One of the most compelling elements of Traoré's appeal is his insistence that unity must come from the grassroots as well as from governments. While he acknowledges the importance of continental institutions, like the African Union, he also recognizes that many of these bodies have been compromised by foreign influence or have grown disconnected from the people they claim to represent. For Traoré, the foundation of unity must be built at the level of communities, youth movements, civil society, and national institutions that are accountable to their citizens. He urges African peoples to take ownership of the integration process, not to wait for top-down directives, but to forge connections across borders through culture, education, trade, and resistance to common forms of exploitation. Traoré also emphasizes that African unity must be practical, not symbolic. It must involve real steps toward economic and security cooperation. He points to the importance of regional alliances that are not dictated by foreign militaries or economic institutions, but shaped by African priorities. For instance, Burkina Faso has sought stronger ties with its neighbors in Mali and Niger, forming a new axis of cooperation that challenges traditional alignments with Western powers. This effort is not merely strategic, it is ideological. It reflects a shared desire to develop African-centered solutions to African problems, whether that means joint military operations, resource sharing agreements, or coordinated political stances on international platforms. Self-determination, in Traoré's philosophy, is inseparable from unity. A divided continent cannot determine its own future. Foreign powers exploit divisions to justify intervention, to fuel internal conflicts, and to maintain economic control. Traoré's speeches repeatedly call on African leaders to stop looking outside for guidance and start trusting in the capacity of their own people. He rejects the notion that Africa needs constant external validation to move forward. Self-determination means rejecting dependency in all its forms: economic, military, cultural, and ideological. It means reclaiming control over education systems, resource management, and governance structures so they reflect African values and priorities, not imported frameworks designed to serve others. This vision requires a mental and psychological shift. Traoré speaks often of the need to decolonize the African mind. He challenges Africans to let go of inferiority complexes and the internalized belief that progress must come from outside. He calls on the youth to be proud of their heritage, to understand their history, and to reject narratives that paint Africa as forever weak, divided, or in need of saving. This ideological self-liberation is as important as any political or economic reform. It is what gives strength and sustainability to the movement for unity and self-determination. Traoré's commitment to this cause is not abstract. He demonstrates it through policies, alliances, and rhetoric that consistently prioritize African interests. His outreach to African diasporas, same his alignment with like-minded leaders, and his efforts to build new structures outside of the traditional power centers all reflect a consistent strategy. Create a new African order where decisions are made by Africans for Africans. He urges the continent to stop begging for aid and start building internal systems of support. Whether it's in food security, defense, or energy. Traoré believes that Africa already has the knowledge and resources to thrive, if only it can come together with the political will to act as one. Of course, such unity will not come easily. The obstacles are many entrenched political elites, foreign meddling, internal conflicts, and the sheer scale of structural reform needed. But Traoré does not see these challenges as reasons to abandon the vision. Rather, he presents unity as the only viable path forward. Fragmentation has failed. Dependency has failed. What remains is the hard but necessary work of building solidarity across artificial divides. This includes addressing long-standing issues such as the fair distribution of wealth between regions, the resolution of cross-border ethnic tensions, and the creation of continental institutions that are truly representative and effective. Traoré's call to unity is also about preparing Africa for the future. In a world facing climate change, shifting global power structures, and technological disruption, no African nation can afford to stand alone. Traoré envisions a continent that is not merely reactive to global events, but proactive, a united bloc that can shape its own destiny and assert its place on the world stage. He calls on African leaders to think generationally, to create policies that serve not only today's needs, but lay the foundation for long-term sovereignty and prosperity.